Perhaps you've seen it. Maybe in a dream. A murky, forgotten land. A place where souls may mend your ailing mind. You will lose everything. Once branded, the symbol of the curse, an augur of darkness. Your past, your future, your very light. None will have meaning, and you won't even care. By then, you'll be something other than human. A thing that feeds on souls, a hollow. Long ago, in a walled-off land far to the north, a great king built a great kingdom. I believe they called it Drang Lake. Perhaps you're familiar. No, how could you be? But one day, you will stand before its decrepit gate without really knowing why. Like a moth drawn to a flame, your wings will burn in anguish, time after time. For that is your fate, the fate of the cursed.
Greetings, everybody. People call me Iggy for some reason, and this is Dark Souls 2. Now, in classic Souls fashion, we have no idea why we are where we are, In this case, we don't even know who we are because we didn't create a character yet. This ties into one of the themes of the game, which has also been introduced in the intro cinematic, namely the loss of identity and the loss of memories. And those little guys might scare you off, but they are actually harmless. Unless you attack them. In that case, they will wreck your shit by swarming you. And at this stage, you don't really have much of a chance against them, because we have nothing to defend ourselves with. So I assume that you know a little bit about the Souls series already. Most likely what you've heard is that the games are really damn difficult, and while they are more challenging than your average game, the games themselves have never really been about the difficulty for me and for the developers as well, I think. It's more like the difficulty was a byproduct of the atmosphere the games try to convey. And, well, let's not go down there yet. Those giant footsteps aren't exactly filling me with confidence. That place looks nice though. This big tree is reminiscent of the arch trees that are in the lore of the first game and of course are also present here. I'll be explaining those things in a little more detail later though, so don't worry about it yet. The same's true for all those items I'm picking up and neglecting to explain, of course. Before we do any of that though, we should really get this whole thing rolling and get us some gear.
What seems to be the ruckus?
Oh my, your face. The face of the curse. It's an undead. An undead has come to play. They all end up here. All the ones like you. You spoke to that kind old dear, didn't you?
You're finished. You'll go hollow. Yes, you'll become one of them.
Hollows prey upon men, feast upon their souls. This is the fate of the cursed.
What is your name?
Let us recall our name. As a few of you might be aware, I tend to give my Souls characters names that are, well, let's just say that they are old German names, the kind of names you would expect your grandma to have. Hiltrud, isn't that cute?
At least you know your own name. Here's your reward for sharing. It's a human effigy.
Take a closer look.
Who do you think it's supposed to be? Think back, deep into your past. Yes, it's an effigy of you.
Now it is time to remember just who exactly we are. Or to translate that into gameplay terms, we'll now create our character. I'll be playing a female since Hiltrud is a female name. The classes, they really only determine your starting stats and your starting gear. You're not locked into a specific role depending on what you pick. You can just do what you want. You can even respec later on if that's what you want to do. For this OP I'll be going with a cleric, because he starts with a weapon that could theoretically carry us through the entire game, and we'll also be able to heal ourselves a little more. We'll make the start a lot easier. We also get to pick a starting gift, which is basically another item we get, or in case of healing wares, a couple items that will, you know, just make healing a little easier. I'll get the petrified something, because I always do. You get something, or you can potentially get something rather nice from that. And now, I don't want to show you the actual physical creation of the character, so here she is. This is Hiltrud. No goofy faces, but I hope you like her. I do.
All people come here for the same reason, to break the curse. You're no different, I should think. Doesn't stand a chance. Well, you never know. Go through the door and trot along to the kingdom. But remember, hold on to your souls. They're all that keep you from going hollow. Oh, I'll fool you no longer. You'll lose your souls. All of them. Over and over again.
Those old ladies just went a little bit meta on us, and I'm not sure if I like that. But since we're now in control again, let's see what more they have to say.
You must go on a journey without rest. Well, I suppose if you find yourself at an impasse. But if your will is yet unbroken, then you may return here to start again with a clean slate.
This is a limbo, a link between Drangleic and the outer world. Fair traveller, I know that you must have a story. Why else would you visit such a place? This lost, decayed kingdom. My name is Millibeth. The old women were once fire keepers. I am here to look after them. It is what my mother did, and her mother before her, and so on. The old women were keepers of the fire. But now, the fire shows signs of fading, and the kingdom is beset by hollows. The old women are sisters. I am told there was a fourth. Long ago, fire keepers were commonplace. But now they are lost, scattered to the winds.
So in the first game, there were a couple firekeepers. They tended to bonfires, which are basically checkpoints and the general base of operations. They heal us, stuff like that. But in this game, there's plenty of bonfires and all the firekeepers have retired. And that door's progress. But we're not going there yet, because, well, you remember those giant footsteps? Of course we're gonna go there now that we have some weapons. Or rather, one weapon. It's this nice little mace here. And you might notice that red axe in the weapon icon in the lower left. That means we can't efficiently use it one-handed because we lack the stats. We need higher strength to use it, but luckily we can just two-hand it and make use of it. That way it'll even be a little more powerful. So, that guy. He looks big and dangerous. but unless you're an idiot and get hit, he's no trouble. There's a really easy way to defeat him. For that, it's best to have him somewhere out in the open, so you can just get around him, and of course behind him, and then not immediately attack him. Just bait him to sit down. Rinse and repeat, you'll have no problem with him whatsoever. That guy's called an ogre, by the way. Our mace makes short work of him. It's a fairly strong weapon anyway. It does strike damage, which is a little bit overpowered in this game. But it'll do for us. I mean, hey, taking enemies out quicker is nicer anyway. Because that fight can get tedious if you're not well equipped. It's worth the reward though in any case, because the stone ring is pretty good. It increases poise damage, which basically means we can stagger enemies faster. This potentially allows us to stun lock them, and I don't have to tell you why that's useful, right? Anyway, this path just circles back around to the old firekeepers, and thus to progress. Now, about those firekeepers. The fact that they retired and there's still bonfires might imply that the Link the Fire ending of the first game is canon. Speaking of bonfires, here's our first one. As I said, basically a checkpoint. It heals us. We can even warp to other bonfires right from the start this time around. But since this is our first one, we don't really have anywhere to warp yet. But yeah, the Link the Fire ending is apparently canon as far as we know. Later on, there may be small details that actually imply the opposite. But yeah, here's one of the big gimmicks of the game. Torches. At any bonfire you can light them, also at those sconces which you can light. They're not too useful, there's like one area I use one in. We're not gonna use it now, it's not necessary, plus we can only really wield our weapon two-handed anyway, so using a torch will make us really weak. Anyway, backstabs. Get behind an enemy, hit him, and do a lot of damage. The weapons do more damage, some might do less. We'll find a dagger later in this area, and I'll show you just how much better that is. But yeah, about the combat system, it's fairly nuanced, though right now we don't really have that much options. It's more of a methodical game. It requires a careful approach to situations. Or just, you know, surprise people from behind. The idea is, fight smart, don't just rush in, it's gonna kill you. And this is that dagger I mentioned. So let's equip it right away, and, you know, actually show you how much damage it does. Thankfully, there's one guy just waiting for us to be ambushed. Or not. Alright, since that one guy didn't actually let us backstab him with a dagger, let's try it on this guy. And without having sufficient stats to wield it, we still do more damage than with the mace. The mace did 194, this did, the dagger I mean, 207. If we had the stats to actually wield it, it would do about twice as much. The dagger has the highest critical modifier in the game, so if you want to go backstab heavy, the dagger is definitely a really good weapon to use. For regular fighting, you'll want to use something different though. Those stone tablets here, they, by the way, act as little tutorials, because this is the tutorial area. That one by the life gem we just picked up basically would have explained us how to heal, because life gems are healing items. As an anti-frustration feature, you always start with 10 of them.
You! Give us smooth! Yes, you! Give us silky!
The resident item trade birds in this game are called Dinah and Tilo. This is the first time they actually have a canon name. And they trade smooth and silky stuff.
Yeah. So nice, so smooth. Yeah! Silky smooth!
For the first time though, we don't actually have to reload the area. And we can also drop multiple items at once. there's basically 4 tiers. That's right, we don't get specific rewards for specific items. We just drop prism stones, small smooth and silky stones, or petrified something, in that order for increasingly higher tiers of rewards. In this case we even, well, were lucky enough to get the Demon's Great Hammer, which was the weapon of the first boss of Dark Souls, which you could get by defeating him in the very first encounter. You probably noticed that we're not exactly inside a cave system, but inside trees. Those giant trees are most definitely arch trees. They're never really mentioned by name in this game, but in the first game they were, and they basically carried the world, so to speak. They were most prominently featured in Ash Lake, one of the most beautiful areas of the game. Jumping still sucks, by the way. The game this time around allows us to actually map jumping to a different button, but we'll still have to sprint before we can actually do that. And I still find it easiest to, jump with the sprint button as well. And of course plunging attacks make their glorious return. They aren't as commonly used in this game though, sadly. But if you jump down from a high enough spot, you can deal massive damage. And you could have also opened this door, of course, but why open a door if you can smash it to pieces? You can, of course, also smash some of the doors you would otherwise need a key for, but sadly, there's only a few of those around. And I'm kind of sad we can't use the cracked red eye orb in this area. It would basically allow us to invade another person's game and ruin their day. It's one of the ways in which you can do PvP in this game, and it's a pretty big draw for a lot of people. Me, I am more of a PvE guy, but of course, I'll show you some PvP later. Thankfully, it's not a separate mode or anything. It's integrated into the main gameplay, as long as you play online, of course. And yeah, since I was a little low on health, I decided to use a miracle. It's one of the 4 schools of magic in this game. To cast it, we need a sacred chime this time around. Now as you make yourself a bridge, be careful about the bow guy. It's best to bait him to shoot, of course, before doing anything. And now, let's actually switch to New Game Plus. Because down there is something that only appears in New Game Plus and on. It's that guy right here, and I completely forgot he was there, so I'm kind of in a bad spot here. But hey, I'm sure I can manage by just healing while tanking a few hits. This is still the tutorial area, so even in New Game Plus, it's not too hard. This is New Game Plus actually, by the way. But yeah, aside from making enemies stronger, this time around there's some new enemies occasionally. There's even items we can only get in New Game Plus and on. Additionally, some boss encounters get spiced up as well. So yeah, to show that and maybe some alternate strategies and stuff like that, we'll occasionally see stuff from New Game Plus. If you look at our health bar, you'll see that it's reduced a little bit. It's capped off at a certain point. That's because we died a couple times and are hollowed just a little bit. It's gradual in this game. Every time you die, you lose about a few % of your health. And to revert that, you will have to use a human effigy or successfully do co-op. Look at those high numbers. And down there's another ogre. There's another one right around the corner. And a few options at our disposal. But for this particular encounter, I'll use hexes. Hexes are one of the 4 schools of magic. There's miracles, which I've already mentioned, mostly defensive. There's sorcery, which is mostly offensive, but of course also mixed a little bit. Then there's pyromancy, which is fire-based magic that doesn't rely heavily on stats like the other types, but still does benefit a little bit from intelligence and faith. Then there's hexes, which we're using right now. I'm doing a bad job. But anyway, hexes. They actually draw power from both intelligence and faith. More precisely, the lowest of the 2 stats, so it's good to keep them about equal. And Dark Orb, which I'm using right now, is one of the most basic spells of that school of magic. And it still does pretty great damage. You can basically use it for everything and switch to more powerful stuff for bosses. And as you can see, we're not having much trouble. Despite getting hit a couple times because, well, I'm an idiot. there's no real reason to keep things boring if you can just go in close against the second one. With a regular new character, this encounter is really damn hard though. You can go back into the tree, into the doorway. They won't be able to get in. You can bait their attacks and hit them 1 or 2 times before they attack you again. It's definitely doable. I did in fact, but it's boring and tedious. I don't recommend it. You do get a reward for this, but it's not really worth it. I'll show it later. First, important stuff, the coffin. Just popping an effigy here in order to regain my human form. My health bar is complete again now. Well, let's get naked. You know, because we're gonna sleep in that coffin. So when it first came out, this message up there wasn't there, but bam, instant sex change. I bet real trans people wish it were that easy. Sadly, that's not the case. But hey, back to our regular scheduled LP. We're of course gonna ignore those guys down there, because, well, yeah, not doing that with our current equipment. It's totally doable, of course, but too much effort at this point. And that was the last little bit of the tutorial area, actually. We could have just, you know, skipped all this by just walking down that middle path. But I always go through here anyway. Basically, you can get a few souls, which are basically currency for everything, and you can also gather a few items. And right after leaving the tutorial area, we see quite a few of those orange messages. Those are left by other players. We could also leave a message here, or anywhere else in fact, and other players in their games would be able to see it. Those can range from helpful to actually leading you into a certain death, so caution is advised. And now for something really pretty. This is the hub area. It's a lot bigger than the hub areas from Demons or Dark Souls. And yeah, we can jump down there. In fact, we will, but we could also go down there. It would be the direct way. But if you go down here, of course, we get a little bit of a reward. We don't have much use for this Sacred Chime because we already have one, but the Morning Star might come in handy. It's a little weaker than our mace, but it does induce a certain status effect. We'll get into that later. The binoculars, though, are really useful in this game, because with that we can actually aim spells, which we couldn't do earlier. Except if we, you know, blind aimed, but that kinda sucked. And yeah, we would have come from there had we gone the direct way. But now, I think we've done enough for one day, so let us just rest, have this new bonfire, and call it for now. But there's still a little more New Game Plus stuff I want to show you. So just do me a favor and stay a little while longer. So right at the start of New Game Plus, New Game Plus wants us to know that it does not fuck around, because right around here there's actually enemies. They are unique to New Game Plus and this area, and I think that's a really nice touch. Those falconers actually use their birds to attack us, and they do a lot of damage, as you can see here. They have a boomerang effect, so be careful. There's one more guy, right there, but we're not gonna bother with him. Instead, we will bother with those guys, which appear right before the Firekeeper's place. They're enemies that appear later in the game, but we won't be seeing them for a while. Now, since we killed both of the ogres down there, we can get us a little something extra.
You have proven yourself to the forest. We have little to offer, except perhaps these. May they bring fortune to your journey in some small way.
So let's use that baby. The ladle, which I have two of, because obviously I've played through this game before. our choke weapon. You can see the damage we're doing. It's pitiful even if you're starting a new character and play this on a regular new game. But yeah, this is basically the boss weapon of the tutorial area, because it doesn't have a proper boss, which I'm kinda sad about, but you can skip it, so that's fine. Yeah. Just enjoy the show. I'm gonna say goodbye for now. Hope to see you again next time we do this, and oh god, it's already broken, that's kinda... Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. See ya next time.